What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Burrow77 coming to you today with some NCAA conference tournament previews. I know it's been a little while since I've done any college basketball content. I've mostly just been short on time, short on manpower, and doing it primarily in the Discord, but I do want to talk about several of the conference tournaments coming up this week. First up, we have the A10, where the A10 is a competitive basketball conference, and it was potentially going to maybe be a two-bid league here, but VCU's recent loss at the end of the season to Dayton probably sinks that. VCU is the odds-on favorite to win here, sitting at minus 110 over on BetMGM. I don't see a lot of value in taking VCU to win 3 games at minus 110. If you're going to get involved and you think VCU wins this tournament, you're probably going to be better off with the value taking the money line and just rolling over all the profits you make on VCU money line all the way through the championship game. VCU is a senior squad that I've watched a ton of. VCU plays outstanding smothering defense, and they rely heavily on their ability to hit the three-point shot. They also work the offensive and defensive glass very well, and if VCU is able to rack up a bunch of second-look possessions, they are going to murder you. I have been a big fan of Max Shulga here on VCU for a couple of seasons. He's a Ukrainian international that I think plays really good ball, and he really leads this team and is huge coming down the stretch when you need a guy to make some free throws, a big play, or even a key pass. Another key piece to VCU's offense is senior Joe Bamisil. Bamisil is a quality shot blocker who also shoots 57.5% from the floor and is very efficient with his shot selection. Another team you have to look at here in the A10 is Dayton. Dayton is getting hot at the right time and playing their best basketball late, even though they played really good basketball early. Their non-conference wins just didn't hold the weight that they thought they would towards the end of the season. Dayton was the preseason favorite to win the A10 this year. Dayton comes into the bracket sitting in the third place position and will get the winner of whoever plays St. Joseph's in the 6th game. Following a 67-72 loss at Loyola Chicago back on February 21st, Dayton has tore off 5 straight conference wins to finish the season. As I mentioned, finishing the year beating VCU in the regular season. Dayton managed to get that win away on the road in a hostile environment too, so that really bumps them up with potential, especially being on the other side of the bracket to VCU. I think they have value at plus 500, and I think George Mason has value at plus 700 as well. Mason tested themselves in their non-conference schedule a bit by scheduling Duke, who promptly beat Mason by 21 points. Mason was hoping to enter the tournament with only 2 conference losses, but picked up their 3rd away at Duquesne on March 1st, with their other 2 losses coming away to VCU and away to Rhode Island. My biggest issue with George Mason is they go to the free throw line a ton, but they are absolutely trash at converting their free throws into buckets. Mason shoots an abysmal 70.7 from the free throw stripe, which according to KenPom is 240th in the nation. I have watched a good amount of Mason because my buddy Tone is an alum, and Mason's big problem is finishing games. They get up big and have double-digit leads, and then they always make it a sweat to finish out the game. Whether you're on their money line or on them against the spread, it's always tough to watch the finish of a Mason game, like I said, because they struggle making their free throws. The reason we're starting here with the A10 is because I want to show how underdogs definitely have value in some of these conference tournaments, especially smaller conferences like the A10, because you get a lot of different styles of basketball. You get a pretty high variance, and most of these teams will have played each other twice, if not going to play for the 3rd time. In college basketball, it is incredibly difficult to beat a team 3 times in a season. Dayton, Mason, and St. Joe's are all on the bottom line here, trying to play VCU or VCU as the 1 seed. So that's where the most value is. Hope something happens to VCU up top, or buy a position to look to hedge out of if you don't want to be against VCU. But we're just trying to get to the championship game here, picking teams on the bottom line. If we're looking for teams in the top line, I do want to shout out SLU. I do think they have a chance to beat VCU. SLU managed a split against VCU this season, going 1-1. SLU took Indiana State's head coach last year, as well as Robbie Avila in the transfer window. As you know, Robbie Avila was a huge sensation last year coming into the tournament, and Indiana State just did not make the cut. It would not surprise me to see SLU go on a storm here and Robbie try and backpack this team to the top of the A10 to get his NCAA appearance. SLU has been hot and cold all season, but they are coming into the tournament winning 4 of their last 5 games. Their only loss in that 5-game stretch being away at Dayton. I am personally biased. I do really like VCU, and I like their game. I like their brand of basketball, and I think that they can give some bigger tournament teams problems with their defense, their shot blocking, and I really just would like to see Max Shulga make the tournament. I'm personally going to play the VCU moneyline rollover, but I did want to point out that Dayton, George Mason, St. Joseph's, and SLU are all teams I think have value in this high variance league. Moving right along, we're going to quickly talk about the ACC bracket. Look, it's all Duke here. Duke is like minus 350 to win this whole thing. It's a terrible number. I don't even think you can make some money doing a money line rollover for 3 games here with Duke. You really just need Duke to get upset somehow here in the top line. I don't think North Carolina is going to be able to do it. I really don't think Wake Forest is going to be able to do it. I don't think the winner of Georgia Tech, Virginia is going to be able to do it. If Pitt somehow got their shit together and got hot, maybe, because Pitt's got some pretty decent guard play when they're healthy, but Pitt sucks outside of their building. So I don't see anybody knocking off Duke in this top half of the bracket, meaning you're looking for some value positions here on the bottom half of the bracket, trying to get them into the game versus Duke, and then making some profit on a hedge or a buyout if that's your thing. I personally see a lot of value here in Clemson at plus 700. Clemson was able to beat Duke at home in their building in their lone head-to-head this year, winning 77-71 on February 8th. That win over Duke kicked off an 8-game Clemson win streak to finish out the season, and the Tigers are a senior team with tournament experience. Tons of upperclassmen experience here for Clemson, and if you look at KenPom, you can see that the average age is 3.02 years in the NCAA, or the 8th most experienced team in the nation. Clemson does just about everything well offensively that you want to see, except for get to the free throw line. When they do get to the free throw line, they tend to convert their chances into points, but they just don't go super often. Clemson's got a balanced attack. They're able to hit the 3 and they're able to drive the lane perfectly fine. They get after the offensive glass heavily and create a lot of second chance opportunities. They play a smothering zone defense and are perfectly capable of switching to man as well. An upper-class Clemson team is going to be tough here, especially if they make it into the final 2 with Duke, who will be looking for revenge. Another team we got to mention here is Louisville. Louisville is like Clemson, filled with upperclassmen, averaging 3.17 years of experience, or number 5 in the nation. The major difference here is Louisville is primarily a 3-point scoring team. If they get hot and they can shoot the lights out of the building, they can win 3 games in a row, no problem. Almost 37% of Louisville's attempts are 3-pointers, which is good enough for 59th in the nation, according to KenPom. So if they start seeing the ball drop and they start feeling themselves, Louisville could make a run here to probably play Duke on the top line for the ACC championship. Last but not least, I do have to mention SMU because they have Boobie Miller. Booby Miller came from Central Michigan and was a Wake Forest transfer last season. He's since transferred to SMU, and I have loved this kid's game for a while now. The problem is Booby is fresh off of an injury where SMU dropped 3 of 5 that he missed to close out this season. Booby did come back on March 4th in a win versus Syracuse, but it's tough to say if Booby's 100% right now. After missing 5 games in a row, Booby did come back for the final 2 regular season games that SMU split, beating Syracuse and losing to Florida State. Booby played 35 and 36 minutes in those games respectively. If you think an additional 4 days of rest will help get Booby back into game shape, they might be able to make a run here and be a little bit of a Cinderella story. It's obviously a long shot, but it's 65 to 1 on FanDuel. It could be worth a cup of coffee because if they beat Clemson, you'll get a number that you'll be able to hedge versus Louisville or Stanford or anybody they play there in the semifinals before even getting to Duke or whoever's coming out of the top line here. So if you think SMU and Booby Miller play good enough to win 2 games in a row and potentially beat Clemson, then I think you got to take a flyer here at 65 to 1 over on FanDuel. Next up, we have the Big Ten, which I love as I am from Big Ten country. Michigan State is playing some of the best basketball in the country right now. The Spartans look great. You can get them at plus 250 to win the Big Ten tournament over on FanDuel, which is almost a playable number here. I think you might get a little bit more value rolling over MSU's money line 3 times, especially if they end up playing UCLA or Scotty. I think that is going to be a very competitive game between Scotty especially, and we'll get to that. Maryland, Michigan, any of those teams, I think they're going to be competitive enough that you can make some more money on the money line rollover for 3 wins than you can at plus 250. It just depends on what you're comfortable doing. I do not want to be on the wrong side of Tom Izzo right now. Izzo has this team playing great basketball, smothering defense, getting after the glass, and doing all the little things right after dropping 3 of 4 to start February. Michigan State finished off the Big Ten conference season with 7 straight wins, including notable ones at U of I, at home versus Purdue, at Michigan, and at home versus Michigan. Beating your rival twice in a season in a 5-game span is massive. Away at Maryland versus Derek Queen, who's one of the best players in the country. And at home to a Wisconsin team that's going to live and die by the 3. And if you fall them, they're going to get to the free throw line and sink their baskets. So I like MSU. I think they're playing their best basketball at the right time. I think it's Tom Izzo season. I think they are going to be an extremely difficult out in the NCAA tournament, and it's going to be very important to see where these guys are seated. I think that the Spartans are a legitimate Final Four contender, and depending on what happens with the bracket, they might be able to make it to the national championship game, not just the Big Ten championship. Other teams I want to mention that I think have value, U of I being on the opposite side of the bracket as Michigan State is going to need a lot out of their Lithuanian international, Kasper Jakunis. U of I challenged themselves all season, including non-conference schedule, on top of the murderer's row that is Big Ten basketball. It is important to note that U of I has been a little bit of a home court merchant here in the Big Ten, with the majority of their losses coming away or on a neutral floor. U of I also has the difficult position of needing an extra game to get to the Big Ten championship, so that is always an issue as well. As I mentioned, Scotty is nasty if they can get hot from 3. Scotty takes 36.4% of all attempts from behind the 3-point arc, which is good enough for number 62 in the nation, according to KenPom. Scotty's biggest weakness is they do not get after the offensive glass at all, which limits their second chance points and mandates that they have a hot shooting night from behind the 3-point arc. The other way Wisconsin can beat you is if you get into a foul game with them. Wisconsin simply does not foul their opponents. They don't put their opponents at the free throw line very often. Wisconsin is above average at drawing contact and getting to the free throw line. And when you put them at the stripe, they are the #1 free throw shooting team in the nation at an outstanding 83.6% as a team. #1 in the nation, according to KenPom. So if you like living and dying by the three ball, Scotty at +700 is definitely worth a flyer. Last but not least, Michigan is not playing their best basketball going into the tournament. That's something you never want to see. They've dropped their last 3 games to close out the regular season, and they've dropped 4 of their last 6 since February 21st. All of that said, they have to play one less game than Wisconsin, Illinois, or Purdue, who I think are legitimate threats. Michigan has already beaten both Purdue and Wisconsin this season. And even though they've lost both rivalry games to Michigan State, I cannot emphasize how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in the same season in college basketball. For that reason alone, coupled with the one less game needed to be played, I think Michigan might be worth a dart at 14-1 if that's your thing. Even if you don't want to ride them to the end, you're probably going to get a great buyout price versus Michigan State in the championship if Michigan's able to put it together and make it that far. Next up, we get into the Big 12, where I got to talk about Houston because I do think they are a legitimate Elite 8 Final Four contender with the potential to win a national championship. And I have not said that over the past couple of years, even when Houston has been really, really good. The difference in this Houston squad this season is they are finally making their free throws. They're not making them at a great clip, but they're doing it at a 73.8% as a team, which is good enough for 123rd in the nation, according to KenPom, which is significantly better than they have been the last 2 seasons. My biggest issue with Houston is that they always had to play a perfect game to win a national championship, and they have been washed out by teams that do what Houston does very well when they play similar opponents. A couple of years ago, they got knocked out by Marquette, who played smothering defense and hit the 3 ball, but made all of their free throws. Houston, likewise, continues to have the same identity where they stretch the floor, they're able to hit their threes, they can play inside, they can play in the post, they can draw contact, but this year they can actually make their free throws. If you couple that with their defensive prowess, I think you have a very, very dangerous team and a Houston squad that I think can go farther than they have in previous tournaments. Here in the Big 12, though, they're just +110 on the money line. I think you'll get better value if you roll that money line over 3 times in a row. The one team I could see challenging Houston here on the top line would be Iowa State. Iowa State looked great early in the season, but had some injury problems where their guard depth got really thin. Iowa State hit a pretty low point, losing a game away to Oklahoma State, but then following that up with winning 2 of their final 3 to finish out the season. And like I said, their guard room has gotten healthier. So if you think that Iowa State finds some momentum here and can play like the team that beat Texas Tech away in their building in overtime back on January 11th, they are more than worth a dart at 7-1 here. As far as value on the bottom goes, I think it's all Texas Tech. I think it's going to be a pretty easy walk for them to the semifinals. The only team that I am concerned about is maybe Zona, but Zona really isn't playing their best basketball, finishing out the season. Haven't been a team whose brand of basketball I like all season, whereas TTU has a better identity, in my opinion. I also think you might be able to get a nice little buyout number here on TTU if they do end up playing Houston from the top line. So I would take a stab at +425 if you're into that. Quickly moving into the Big East, I love Johnny's. I think the Red Storm have been playing absolutely fantastic basketball. I don't believe in Shaka Smart and Marquette. They have been kind of fraudulent all season. I think that Xavier game is going to be really tough for them. And before I get into Xavier, I do want to mention Johnny's you can get at +155 over on DraftKings if you want to just take them to win 3 games in a row and roll the money line over. I think you can find some value there as well. I personally think this is going to be Johns versus Creighton for the final. I don't think UConn is going to be able to put it together and make a run here. And Nova's just not good enough to live and die by the three-point ball to win 4 games in a row and go to the championship. I do, however, think I am going to get involved with an Xavier future here at plus 950. Like I said, I think they are going to handle Marquette. They split the regular season with Marquette already. Xavier shoots extremely effective from 3, but they are perfectly capable of putting the ball on the floor, drawing some contact, and going to the free throw line as well. Xavier shoots 79.3% from the free throw line as a team, which is good enough for number 10 in the nation, according to KenPom. Xavier gets all over the defensive glass. Their biggest issue is offensive rebounding, where they are 313th in the nation, according to KenPom, which is very, very poor. However, this Xavier squad is filled with upperclassmen with an average of 3.54 years of D1 experience, which is good enough for number 2 in the nation, according to KenPom. Like I said, it is extremely difficult to try and beat a team 3 times in a single season. St. John's has beaten Xavier twice, but Xavier did push Johnny's to overtime and lost 79-71 in an outstanding game away at Johnny's, but I'm fairly sure that was at Madison Square Garden. Johnny's like splits between playing at their home court and MSG, so MSG is typically listed as true home games for them, even though it is technically a neutral court. Or a semi-home, if you want to call it that. Just different backdrop, different shooting. It's a different experience. So I think that Xavier on a neutral court, not in Madison Square Garden here, taking on Johnny's for the 3rd time would be huge. They need to get past Marquette first, but that is the only potential stumbling point I see here for the Johnnies. And for that reason, I'm going to take a flyer on Xavier to win the Big East at plus 950 over on FanDuel. Let's keep it moving over into the Mountain West, where it's anybody's game, and everybody except for pretty much New Mexico is fighting for their tournament lives. I think New Mexico will be in either way. At plus 250 to win the Mountain West over on DraftKings, I'm not sure that's going to be enough value for me. Whoever they end up playing after beating San Jose State or Wyoming, I think they'll handle them pretty easily. The winner of San Diego State versus Boise State is most likely going to be the biggest game here. New Mexico will be a very small favorite, if a favorite at all, versus either of those 2 teams. As I mentioned, Boise State doesn't super have the resume to make the tournament unless they make a run here and knock off a SDSU and a New Mexico. So I think they're worth a flyer at 5-1 over on FanDuel. Boise can play very good basketball. They've been a little bit of home court merchants, but a lot of teams in this Mountain West are home court merchants. I personally want to be with SDSU. I think they have the better head coach. I think they play a little bit better brand of basketball. Unfortunately, SDSU doesn't hit anything on the offensive metrics I want to talk about. I will mention they're completely abysmal from the free throw line, shooting just 67% as a team, which is 330th in the nation, according to KenPom. That is absolutely trash. However, SDSU plays outstanding defense, and that's really what they're going to have to beat Boise State with. SDSU has already managed to beat Boise State twice, both home and away. So like I said, it is really hard to beat a team 3 times, and that's why Boise State is the slight favorite coming out of this top line compared to SDSU. It's so hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. It's not like SDSU is playing trash basketball coming down the stretch either. So the sportsbooks have Boise favored to come out of that head-to-head. I think there's value on SDSU here to finish off the clean sweep and beat Boise 3 times and to go out and give Donovan Dent and the New Mexico Lobos a hell of a game. On the bottom line, if you want to get involved in Colorado State because of how hot they've been, I'm not going to try and talk you out of it. The Rams have ripped off 7 in a row, but 4 of those 7 have come at home at altitude, where it is much harder to play Colorado State. The marquee win being the final season game away at Boise State. The Rams managed to win that 83-73, putting them right on or just outside the bubble, depending on who you rate when it comes to bracketology. Personally, I don't get involved in it. I just let the committee make their decisions and talk about the games as they come. I will talk snubs and who I think plays better basketball, yada, 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 a little bit in another video. But if you like Colorado State, I'm not going to try and talk you out of it. The Rams are red hot right now. They did just beat Boise State. And at plus 425, that's not a terrible price that I think you might be able to get out of just a little bit with some profit if they do end up playing New Mexico in the championship game, or if they end up playing SDSU or Boise State. I think you could make even more profit there. Utah State are just complete home court merchants, in my opinion. I liked the Aggies. I liked them last season. They had some upper class guys that I really liked that aren't there anymore. I just don't think the value's there at plus 425 for a team that really does require their home court to be as good as they have been. I want to say they've only lost 3 games in the last 3 years at their home court. The Aggies get out there and support. It's like 18,000 person stadium. There's a lot of really good basketball over here in the Mountain West, as we saw last year with, I think, 5 teams making the field of 68 or maybe even 6. So, yeah, it's just a little bit down this season, but I think Donovan Dent and the New Mexico Lobos are the team to beat. I think that San Diego State or Boise State can give New Mexico a game. If you want to get with the Rams coming off the bottom line at plus 425, I'm not going to hate. They are red hot right now. Last but not least, let's get into the SEC. This is the most wide open bracket there is. You could talk me into just about anybody for a future for value alone here, because I think Auburn's the best team in the country. Now, Auburn's not without some flaws. They've obviously stumbled twice here down the stretch, which is why we've seen Duke become the new odds-on favorite to win the national championship. After starting the year 27-2, Auburn has fumbled their final 2 games of the season. Away at Texas A&M, who just simply outcoached them and has been having Bruce Pearl's number for a while here. There's a pretty big history there. So I could see you getting involved with A&M at 30-1 if you think that A&M has what it takes to beat a Vanderbilt and or a Texas. I think they can beat Texas, but Vandy's nasty. Everybody in the SEC is nasty. Like, this is going to be a very, very difficult tournament to win. I think we could see a lot of chaos here. So a lot of what I'm talking about is throwing darts and taking long shots. So if you like A&M, I think 30-1. They are one of the few teams, I think, from the top line who has a chance at beating Auburn if they can make it to that matchup. I think Auburn is going to have kind of a gift here in their first game. I think they handle Ole Miss, Arkansas, or South Carolina pretty well. But whoever they play in their second game, be it Tennessee, be it A&M, be it Vanderbilt, I just don't think Texas has the legs to go that far. But hey, prove me wrong, Texas. You've been trash everywhere except for your own building this season, whereas A&M, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt have been a little bit better away. But any of those guys could give Auburn a tough game. I think A&M definitely sets up to give them the toughest game out of anybody in the top line here. So that's the only team from the top I would take a future on at 30-1. I just think it's too good a value to pass up. In the bottom side of the bracket, I think Florida is a legitimate national title competitor and a Final Four team. For me, the number on the Gators is just too short right now at plus 270 over on DraftKings. I don't want to get involved at that price. I can take them on the money line to win 2 games in a row. And if I decide to roll it over against Auburn, I could do that, or I could take some profits and just kind of try and back them as dogs on the money line versus Auburn. I think they'll be money line dogs maybe in a couple of these games, maybe just one. I don't know. That Alabama game would be kind of tricky, but personally, I like Florida a lot. I just can't talk myself into getting involved in the number at plus 270. So I think you need at least plus 500 on Alabama or something longer to get involved here. I personally don't want to take Alabama. I like Nate Oates. I like Nate Oates' ball. I like Marcus Sears. I think Alabama is a very capable team. I just don't think you can play only the offensive side of the ball because their defense leaves a lot to be desired for me. I need a team that can get me 2 or 3 stops in a row in key moments to finish out big games. And I just don't think that that is quite Alabama yet. I would love to be proven wrong. Show me on the floor in the tournament. A team that didn't get the double bye that I really like is Kentucky. Kentucky has been a menace away from their building and as money line dogs all season. And if you're going to give me Kentucky at 25-1 to get on a hot run here, I'm going to go ahead and take it. I think Kentucky has the talent to play with Bama, to play with Florida. They lack a little bit of the defense that Florida does, but I think they can give both of those squads a game. Alabama has beaten Kentucky twice this season, and as I've said throughout this entire video, it's incredibly difficult to beat a team 3 times, so advantage Kentucky there, in my opinion. Kentucky's biggest weakness, in my opinion, is not getting enough offensive rebounds and their inability to create turnovers and steals on defense. Other than that, I think Kentucky is a pretty complete team, and I definitely am going to throw a cup of coffee on them to win the SEC at 25-1. Finally, we have the Georgia Bulldogs at 250-1. Georgia's playing some of their best basketball of the season coming into the tournament, winning 4 games in a row, including shaking the idea that they have been home court merchants all season by winning away games at Texas, who have been very tough in their own building, and at South Carolina. I'm not saying that a team from Wednesday is going to make it to Saturday and win the tournament. I'm just saying that Georgia at 250-1 is just too much value, and for $5, I'm in. I'm taking a ride. Go Bulldogs. So that's all the time I have today for some conference tournament talk. I appreciate you all tuning in. Please be sure to check out, make sure to like and subscribe right here on youtube.com/@Burrow772. Check out the links down below in the description to see the Discords. Follow me on social media at Burrow77, Twitter, Instagram, X, whatever you want to call it. And if you need a place to bet, sign up with BetUS down below. My promo code will get you 125% deposit match. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you at the window, and we will talk again shortly with Selection Sunday coming up. Until next time, Oaks out. Doses. We outside!